Georgia Tech was the last bastion for Power 5 under center triple option football. Well, technically they ran the flexbone, but the point remains. They have moved on from their longtime coach Paul Johnson, and they've decided to move into the 21st century with Geoff Collins. His first season was met with a series of expected roadblocks, but he delivered with a solid recruiting class this past cycle. Things are looking up for the Yellow Jackets, but are they ready to make the jump to being a competitive ACC team? Or will it take more time to completely overhaul this team's identity? While Georgia Tech has left the flexbone offense, there are still some major influences on their version of the spread offense. A lot of their running game is still predicated on the read option. The read option is a running play where the quarterback reads the end man on the line of scrimmage and has to decide whether to give the ball to the running back, turning it into a standard inside zone run, or to keep it himself around the outside. This shouldn't be confused with the run-pass option, where the quarterback has an option to either give the ball on a handoff or throw the ball downfield. Here's a textbook example of the read option in action. The quarterback is reading this end man on the line of scrimmage, in this case, this defensive end, who pinches in to take away the give to the running back. Unfortunately for North Carolina, the quarterback pulls the ball and gets 15 free yards. Here's another example, but with gap blocking instead of zone blocking. These two linemen pull, which pulls the linebackers and opens up a running lane for the quarterback. A common method of combating the read option is called scrape or gap exchange. This means that the end man on the line of scrimmage is going to crash inside to force the quarterback keep, and then the linebacker is going to scrape over the top to get the quarterback. The beautiful thing about the option is that there's always a counter to it. If the offense blocks the defensive end while the linebacker scrapes, it basically clears a gap to run through. This play starts off looking just like a read option play. The defensive end sees this and crashes hard inside, which means that this linebacker now has to scrape over the top to ensure that the quarterback would be defended if he pulled the ball. However, this isn't a read option play. This pulling guard comes around and blocks out the defensive end. Meanwhile, the step or two to the outside that this linebacker had to take helps widen the running lane on this play. Now in this play, something very similar happens. This linebacker scrapes hard expecting the read option, but instead of finding a quarterback on the run, he finds himself out of position. Outside of these option influences, their offense is fairly vanilla. You might see some triple options sprinkled in, but for the most part, you see short passing concepts and conservative runs. Something to consider, however, is that if Georgia Tech decides to ride with the same quarterback they did last year, he is a surprisingly decent deep ball threat. Another curious thing about Tech's offense this past year is that they had a weird tendency to call the exact same play twice in a row if it was successful the first time. This didn't work very often, and I don't know why they did this. This brings me to the crux of my complaint about Georgia Tech's offense. They are in way too much of a hurry to look like a generic spread offense. These read option looks and shot plays were by far their most successful looks last year. However, they didn't utilize them as frequently as they should have. Georgia Southern a few years ago proved that you can have success while moving from the flexbone. They actually improved when they moved into more of a spread option style, even while transitioning up into the FBS. Their key was to retain a lot of the things that made them successful beforehand. They just did it in a different formation. In my opinion, Georgia Tech should have taken more notes from Georgia Southern and stuck a bit more to their roots. If you had to choose a strong suit for this team last year, it'd be their defense. Their coach, Geoff Collins, is a defensive guy after all. What's most interesting about their defensive scheme is just how multiple they really are. They line up as a base 4-3 defense, meaning 4 down linemen and 3 linebackers, but don't be surprised when they sporadically line up in odd fronts. This diversity in setup allows for them to come up with some exotic blitzes. By lining up with a linebacker in each A-gap, it forces Miami to account for them in their pass protection. This frees up this defensive end for the sack. Here's another example in the same game. Georgia Tech's aggressive alignment forces Miami into a slide protection. This means that all of the linemen are responsible for the gap to the left of them, or the top of the screen. And this running back has to man block anyone who comes off the end here. This is a clear mismatch against this bull rushing defensive end who helps cause an inaccurate pass. Sometimes the biggest concern isn't who is blitzing, but who isn't blitzing. In this case, this defensive end sneaks back in coverage and robs the slant route for a good pick. Now, there are downsides to this approach. These aggressive fronts put extra stress on the linebackers who aren't the fastest to begin with. I've found a couple examples where they're just a couple of steps too slow to fill the hole. This in particular might make it especially difficult to defend Norvell's outside zone heavy offense, which loves to stretch the field horizontally. This aggressiveness also puts his secondary on islands. This led to success for several teams in the RPO game. However, I would be remiss if I failed to mention their biggest impact player on defense. Wanye Thomas is a free safety that shows incredible range. His ability to cover the field in both the passing game and the running game helps alleviate some of the pressure from the linebackers. Now, Georgia Tech is an interesting team to watch. They weren't good last year. Most of that had to do with the transition to a new offense, but a good part of it had to do with their stubbornness in trying to force a square peg in a round hole. Maybe it helped with recruiting. I don't know. Collins and company have proven that they are capable recruiters, and if they get enough time to build a team, they could become a threat in the ACC in the future. However, that time doesn't look to be now, and barring a Miami-level disaster, I don't foresee them walking out of Tallahassee with a winning record. Thanks for watching. I'm hoping to be able to do these previews for every game in the upcoming season. Let me know what you think. Make sure to like and subscribe, and check out all the other great content we have at Tomahawk Nation.